Hi everyone, it's Paul at the Garland County Library, and I'm here today with Kimberly Lew, who is the Vice Chair of the SWAP Coalition to Prevent and End Homelessness. And she is here today to discuss this complicated topic of homelessness in Arkansas and lead a conversation about some potential solutions and hurdles that surround this issue. So welcome, Kimberly. It's great to have you join us today.
Thank you very much. I am very glad to be here. I'm grateful to the library for being open to having this conversation and inviting me to lead it, because there are so many people in our community who are involved in addressing the issues of our unsheltered neighbors. And I think that the library, as a great resource of both education and connection, is a fine host to this conversation. I would like to start with a disclaimer that the opinions that I express here are my own, although I am the vice chair of the Southwest Arkansas Partnership, which is the local coalition encompassing Clark, Garland, Hot Spring, Montgomery, Nevada, and Pike counties. And we are part of a larger organization called the Arkansas Balance of State, which is administered by HUD, actually. So Housing and Urban Development on a federal level. And it is the goal of the Arkansas Balance of State Continuum of Care and SWAP to address the issues that surround the experience of homelessness and try to end and prevent them. But the opinions here are my own, and I have a lot of them. I would also like to apologize for any language that I might use, because I tend to be colorful. And as I've invited some friends to come and visit, and maybe they'll show up and maybe they won't, but if we start getting into conversation and say some wildly colorful things, I do not mean to offend anyone in the audience. So first, I'd like to just arrive and settle, because I'm pretty excited about this thing, and I would like to have a heartfelt and open conversation with you about homelessness, the experience, the situations that lead up to homelessness, a sense of how it's not a fault-finding thing. I think that framing homelessness as someone's fault is probably where we begin to get off track, and that I would like us to embrace the idea that labels really aren't helping us, and that if we understand our neighbors as human people who have challenges and goals and aspirations, that will actually help build a community that's supportive of every person in our community. My intention in the ongoing conversations that I have at the library is that we all approach it with openness of heart and curiosity of someone else's experience, and a general sense of kindness. And that I would invite anyone from our community, if you are exploring the idea of unsheltered neighbors in our community, let you come and speak with me, and we can kind of discuss and explore what kind of thoughts we have about it, what kind of prejudices, what kind of hopes we have for our community, and how to build Hot Springs in Garland County and the surrounding areas into a welcoming and supportive place, rather than a place where everyone kind of feels as if we are I don't know, fighting for survival. Maybe that's the term that I would use on this. Yeah. So when Paul first, hello, come
How
on
you doing?
in. We were just speaking that I had invited some fine guests. We are
Do we
on,
got assigned seats? or what
we
doing?
we are videoing right now, speaking to an audience.
Okay.
So, see, I offer a conversation and the neighbors come in. Come on in, Miss Janice. So we're gonna have to all scoot over and then all be within
The camera
the
view.
framework of the
I
camera.
knew I was gonna be on camera.
That's all right, no worries, no worries. I
I
was
this.
I was
You
just,
are the bestest.
No, I'm not. Look at you.
I
I
was-
was this.
please do not feel upset about
Yes, I
this.
do. I thought this was a casual.
You may slide out of the camera if you feel more comfortable and still speak.
That's right. We'll just get you on audio, not video.
Oh, I would have put on a different shirt and made them my buddy.
It's your heart and your mind that we are here for. It is not how you look,
Yes,
okay?
it is.
No, it's not. See, that's the whole thing about this discussion of unsheltered humans, is that we judge people by their outer cover, and that gives us no indication of what is deep inside. And I know that from you, because you do much homeless and poverty outreach, that you are a large-hearted woman, and that's the part that I see. So have no worries. So,
Have some vanity.
so this is Boyce Mitchell, and would you like to say, I could describe you as a friend I know who does a lot of street outreach and works at Ouachita Behavioral Health and Wellness.
I'm part of the PATH grant, PATH, and that stands for Project Assistance that helps transition from homelessness. Like you said, I work for Ouachita Behavioral Health. I'm part of the United Way SWAP coalition, and I'm also the chair member of the Hot Spring County Homeless Coalition in Malvern.
Yeah, and you have some exciting things to say about that
Yes,
too.
yes, I've got some really good things brewing for that. That's been a long time coming.
Okay, and Janice, do you want to say?
What?
Janice Davis is the director of Food for Thought,
Our giving team.
our
Yes.
giving team, and you have regular outreach to our community on the last Saturday of the
The
month?
fourth. The
Fourth
fourth
Saturday.
Saturday, because sometimes we have 5.
Okay, and then you also do a huge Thanksgiving?
Yes, it's coming up, November 25th, from 11 to 2 at Historic Vista Chapel AME Church, where this year is the first year that we will not do in-house feeding. It will be to go and take out and deliveries. To go and take out, same thing. But last year we fed 1,200 citizens in Hot Springs, and we anticipate 1,500 to 800 this year. We're preparing for it.
Wow.
Where you receive a traditional Thanksgiving meal with the dessert. We're
That's great. Now,
excited.
see, I met you, how many years ago?
Many.
You had come to SWAP, and had it been your first year that you had started feeding for Thanksgiving? You'd been doing
This
it
is
for
year
a while.
17.
I did not know that.
Year 17.
That's great. So how did you get started?
We started because my son was an NFL exec and I only had one kiddo, and he had to go to a playoff game and he couldn't come home, and I was beside myself. And because that year I learned the true meaning of Thanksgiving. It's not about family. It's about who you make family. And he couldn't come. And so I didn't want to be with other people's family. So I chose other people to be my family.
Mm.
And that's how it started. So the next year he goes, well, why can't we continue to do this? Just feed everybody. So the first year I solicited my friends, and it's like, okay, let's just call people and see who doesn't have family or who won't eat Thanksgiving. And I fed 52 people. And the next year we fed 100. And that next year was Katrina. So
Ooh.
that was when Katrina had hit. And then the next year we fed like 160. The next year was over 200. And it just grew from that point on.
Wow. And it keeps on growing,
It does.
which kind of is a little disturbing to me when I think about it in terms of, yeah, people are hungry and
They are. And people don't have people for Thanksgiving. You know, it's about sharing and giving. But now I realize it's not about family. Because, you know, when you think about it, people all come together, but somebody will complain about the fruit salad that somebody brings that they don't like, and they already say, I'm not going to eat it, or the greens that everybody doesn't like, or it is in everybody's family. Tell
They
the
miss
truth.
the true meaning.
They do, the fellowship and what you're truly thankful for. And there are some people who don't have a family, who's, you know, like your parents may be deceased, or you don't have a family, you don't have siblings, or the true people in your lives aren't there anymore.
right. So you miss that connection.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
gone,
Yeah.
and you're by yourself. Look how many people eat at Wendy's or McDonald's, and now those places are closed.
Right. You can't even sit in there and
No,
You can
so
spend
you're
time
by
with
yourself, and now this year with the price of turkeys and finding them,
are you
that
having
we've
trouble
come,
with that?
yes.
Okay.
And then most of my donations come from people who don't even live in Hot Springs.
Really?
I received a check today from Denver.
Wow.
I got one from New Mexico 2 weeks ago. One of my friends sent $1,000 from Georgia. People donate to a Thanksgiving this year that don't even live here because they believe in what I do. It's not from people here, trust me.
Well,
People who donate to the Giving Team Inc. aren't necessarily residents of Hot Springs.
and that points to the idea that, you know, the need is real and there is a connection and there is generosity, but it's coordinating all these things so that everyone gets what they need. That is probably the largest lift in dealing with poverty and homelessness in our area.
Right. With food for thought, it's the same thing.
Because, like, how did you and Boyce end up being, I mean, because you show up on the same Saturday and.
Because I asked him to. I did. I said, please help me. He's my Boyce. Everybody knows that that's what I call him, my Boyce. I'm on the board at Watchdog Behavior, but in meetings, I say my Boyce. They know.
Yeah, they know.
From Dr. Grisham on down, I am his biggest cheerleader.
That is true.
That's good. That's good.
They know.
I love Boyce
I will
too.
never, ever not sit in a board meeting and not call his name. I mean, the last meeting, I said to them, he is the true face of Watchdog Behavior. And I mean that from my heart. My son, I won't use the terminology, but who is this man? I had Boyce meet my son's best friend. I'm here, I'm looking at this man that your mama always talking about.
She makes it hard for me to live up to all the good things she says.
But they're true. In our society, as an African-American man, there's not a lot that can build up to him. Because he walks in his own footsteps, but he makes new ones as he walks. You know, Black lives matter, white lives matter, people matter. And that's hard because Black men get such a horrible rep.
Oh, exactly, exactly.
And
Another one of those judging books by their covers.
yes, and I'm sure he gets judged, but he proves them wrong all the time.
Well, yes.
He sits at the head of a table, and you know what? The table has to shift. He doesn't have to move. The table has to move. He moves the table. That's real talk.
That's just because I've been doing it for about 26 years.
Has it been 26 years?
26 years.
So how did you get into it?
How do I get into it? Well, I got into it for selfish reasons.
That's how we
out,
start.
yeah.
Yep, that
It
is.
started out really, really selfish. I was really, really young working at a pressing plant. And it was probably 102 degrees outside. And I was on a press machine, and there was 10 that way, and there was 10 that way. And there was another 10 behind me, and everybody's sitting there hitting steam to press the jeans, and they give you this big fan, but it's blowing hot air because that's all that's in here. And I said, man, this is rough. And I was leaving work one day, and one of my family members who works in the mental health field called me. Then he asked me to bring something that I had borrowed from him and drop it off at his job. So I said, okay, I'll get off in about 15 minutes. I'll be by there. So I went by there and I dropped it off, and he gave me the address. And when I went in there, I said, I thought you said you were at work. He said, I am at work. I said, in this house? He said, yes, in this house. I said, and you can watch TV while you're at work? He said, yeah. He said, I can go in there and cook and do whatever I want. You know, he was in a group home watching some mental health clients.
Oh,
And I said, I got to get me one of these. So I asked him immediately, who is the head person over at Birch Street? And he told me his name, and I went there the very next morning, and I knocked on his door, and I said, my name is such and such, and I just want to know if I could get an application, and I'd like to work for you guys. He's like, well, we kind of don't give out applications where we're not hiring, and we're not hiring right now. So, I said, okay, that's no problem. I said, I'll just check back with you at a later date. So I waited about 3 weeks, and I went back up there, and I met with him again, knocked on his door. I said, I'm just checking back with you, see if anything has changed. I really want to work for you guys, and, I'd like an application. He said, still not hiring. I said, okay, I'll see you in a few days.
Mm.
And he started laughing and said, okay. And I was there in a few days. And he looked at me and just went,
okay. Give up.
That's exactly what he said. He said, look, I've got something coming up in about a month. You don't have to come back. I promise you, I'm writing your name down. I got your number. Soon as it's available, I'm calling you. And he called me about a month and a half. And when a month and a half went by, and I started in the mental health field way back in 1995 then.
Wow.
And that's how I got started. But I was told no several different times. And I went from working right there on the ground to working with people throughout everywhere, and then moved into homelessness because mental health. I work with the SMI, seriously mentally ill, and that coupled with homelessness. So, I was kind of just moved right into homelessness about 8 years ago. But I've been in, mental health for almost 25 years.
So then did you have to go to school? I mean,
I went to some college and with my associates, but it was something totally different than mental health. I worked on the ground with the SMI population for so long. I worked with water intoxicators. I worked with people who go catatonic. I worked with people who had 8 different personalities. I've worked with people who are bipolar, PTSD, schizophrenic, and I basically spent more time with people with mental health diagnosis than I did at home. I was working 17 hours a day in the group home with those individuals. And I went home and slept for 8 hours, and I had to be right back at work that same day that I got off at 7, I had to be there at 3 for the next 17-hour shift. And I basically lived with them. And I learned, just like you would if you live with anybody, you start to learn about their illness, what helps, what doesn't work, what really hurts, and how to de-escalate people, and it's trial by fire.
And you're still in it, so
I'm still in it.
You're a persistent learner.
Yes, if I told you my first day, you would be surprised that I'm still in it. Because it was not.
It was not pretty that day.
No, a lot of people haven't worked with people. They call it cycling. And there's a lot of mental health professionals that have never worked with an individual who cycles. And you don't even hardly see it because they don't let it get that bad. But when I first started, they didn't send people to the hospital as often, or the state hospital. They just put you one-on-one and tell you to make sure that individual didn't harm itself. But when somebody cycles and their illness gets so bad and they go unmedicated for so long without treatment, they'll go through every one of their emotions. They'll get angry, then they'll get sexual, then they'll start laughing, then they'll start crying, then they'll get depressed, and then they'll get manic, and
all
they're
completely
all
compressed
with each emotion only lasts 15 to 20 seconds. So you're seeing it in repetition really, really fast. So they'll go from touching you 1 minute to getting violent, then to laughing, and then crying, and then get euphoric, and then get manic and ramble. And so that was my first night without any training.
Oh, my. And you came back, and you came back to work.
So, I was.
There's some respect there I have for you.
That was a long time ago, but, I've learned a thing or two since then.
And how do you, 26 years, how do you stay in the game, really?
Well, I learned to be very cautious with my energy and be really good management with where I pour my resources, where I pour my energy, where I pour my time, because I don't pour anything unless it's going to bear fruit. And what I mean by that is you start to see on the front end the things that needs to happen in order to bear fruit with the individuals that you work with. So if somebody is only coming to me with 30% of the energy to be trying to help themselves, I can't be putting in 70 to help this individual and him be putting in 30, and he is the one who has to do all of this.
Right.
So you start to learn, you only exert the amount of energy that individual exerts, and you start to walk with them. So you move and then they move, and you're not trying to drag them along, or you're not expending all of this time and energy and resources, and it won't bear fruit in the end. So you get really selective about how much and how you pour and how to manage that, and who has a more likely chance to succeed and who's doing more. So you pour some of those resources in that success. So you start having more success stories that's able to keep you going versus constant failure.
Yeah. No, I think that like every project in town that wants to deal with any issues of lack is like that aspect is the most important thing of being able to distinguish. Because I have a lot of enthusiasm, but I will be running down rabbit holes and then come back exhausted.
Yeah.
Like, what happened?
Yeah.
And I think, how am I going to, but I need a win. So I
Yeah.
keep on going in thinking,
Right.
I'm gonna find a win here, but maybe I should learn to be a little more selective.
Yeah, you have, and I'm not saying not to help any individual. It's just that point of knowing what's helping and what's enabling. There's a very thin line between helping somebody and enabling somebody. You begin to enable people when you don't make them exert the same amount of energy that you're exerting to help them. You start enabling people when you constantly have a task and they don't have a task. You continually to help them and enable them when you provide them things and you start feeding them instead of teaching them how to fish. Because if you start to provide them and give them, then you have to continue to give them what they need instead of teaching them to go out and get what they need. So you're no longer needed.
Right. And I guess that points to kind of how the public interaction with those who are perceived to be homeless, with the whole panhandling or giving things. And then we end up with that place where Like, I feel bad if I have cash in my pocket and someone is asking for cash.
I tell people that all the time.
That
I said the worst thing you could do is hand money out that window. I'm gonna tell you why. Because it's the whole thing. Are you planning on doing that forever? Because unless we're planning on doing that forever and everybody doing it, we should not do that to that individual. Because if that individual could stand on that corner and get $5 from you, $10 from you, and 15 from the next car, and some money from the next car after you, the reason they're homeless, they're not going to stop doing that because that's what's telling them this is how I survive. So they have to make a choice now. Am I just going to keep accepting this money so I can survive? Or are things so bad and nobody's giving me money? Maybe I need to go down to the DMV and get my driver's license so I can get a job. Maybe I need to go get my birth certificate. But as long as somebody is exerting money and giving money out the window, they're not going to go sit in those places and do the things that's going to take to correct their situation. So you're just putting off the inevitable. You cannot help a homeless individual by handing any money out the window. Those people need wraparound services. They need case management. They need to be signed up for food stamps. Why would you hand money out when you can sign them up and get them qualified for food stamps so they could get it on a monthly basis? So you're solving a problem. But handing money out does not solve any problem whatsoever.
it makes me feel less guilty for a
Yeah,
moment.
it's right. It helps the person who's giving the money.
But
It makes me
not-
feel like, hey, I've given back. I
Right.
have done my part.
I can go another
But-
week without
that's right.
feeling bad.
But that's enabling. That's not helping. That is it makes us feel good, but that individual is going to keep coming out on the sidewalk. Matter of fact, you're going to attract 3 more that's going to quit their job because they can make more sitting right here. So you're actually perpetuating it and not helping it. When I want to put a sign up behind those individuals and say, please don't give money out the window. If you want to help this individual under this sign, call this 1-800 number and get them with an organization, somebody who can provide case management, somebody that can follow that client, somebody that can help them with applications, somebody can sign those, take that money and apply it to people with resources of what it takes, because it takes a month or 2 for that individual to be where they need to be. So that money out the window is not going to compensate for a month worth of work of hands-on with that person. It's just not going to do it.
But it seems like the systems are very cumbersome, and if your baseline is I have a mental health issue, what's the likelihood that I can even come to the DMV twice because I go once, have to stand in line, and I don't have what they want,
That's right.
and then I have to go away
Mhm.
and then come back?
That's why we have to get them with an organization who's already aware of what they need before they go, who's already aware that they need transportation and is going to set up bus tickets and whatever it takes to get them there, or going to give them wraparound services, not just for that DMV ride, but to get their birth certificate. You can't even apply for an apartment if you don't have a birth certificate and an ID. So all of these things that it's going to take to get them off the street, you're not going to be able to provide while they're standing right there on the corner with a sign. You're fooling yourself. You are enabling and not helping.
Right, but I mean, it seems just in my involvement with SWAP and supportive services are undermanned. You do not, I mean,
They're
when
underfunded.
when I think of you, I think, oh my gosh, we only need 6,000 more voices in our community, and you've only recently gotten a helper.
Yes. that's right.
And I think, oh, everyone needs a voice.
Well, I try my best not to, no matter what I'm able to provide an individual, I try not to let anybody leave my presence without something. Sometimes that's only hope. Sometimes that's only empathy, that if we didn't get everything solved today, the good thing about it is you're not walking through this alone anymore, because before you walked through the door, you didn't have anybody, or you were having to deal with these problems alone. While we may not have fixed it today, you gain somebody on your side that's going to continue to chip away at this big rock until we get it down to a pebble, and you're not by yourself. So you never leave an individual, especially somebody who's homeless or suicidal. You never leave an individual who come to you with, you at least have hope to give them, and you should have much more, but even if you don't have any resources or you don't have any training, you should never let them leave without at least hope. And I've had many of them say, don't you quit apologizing because we didn't fix it today. I'm just happy somebody listened to me. I feel better. Now I can go out and be better. You see what I mean?
Right, right. So do you have that experience when you do your food for thought and giving thing on Saturdays?
We do. I mean, they don't leave with nothing. The services are available. We give out information. If you have nothing, when you walk through the gate, you're going to get something.
So where's your gate? Where do you have your event?
In the parking lot adjacent to what was the Habitat Restore across the street in that parking lot.
Okay.
So when you come through, you're going to sign up. Watchdog Behavioral is there. Then we're there, and you're going to, if you needed socks or underwear, you're going to leave with that. You're going to leave with a sandwich and some chips. You're going to leave with a care bag. If you didn't have care products, you're going to leave with a month's worth of care products.
Oh.
Yes, the full size, not the miniature, the full size washcloth, toothpaste, toothbrush, deodorant, a bar of soap, shampoo. Boyce also has
Tents and
tarps.
and
Now
underwear.
we have a giving bag, a giving box. You're gonna have
We also have a person there that sets people up with government phones, to try to help them get phones, because
yes.
that's another one of our people's problems. If you don't have a cell phone, how can you make appointments? How can you set up appointments?
Right.
How can you reach out for
give you
help?
a free phone.
Yeah,
Free.
so, we just try to put all of these resources in one place so they can have a one-stop shop. When they come in, they can get case management from me. They can get on my grant if they qualify, if they have a mental health diagnosis. If they need underwear or socks or deodorant, we can get that to them. They go right next to the next tent and get shoes for their kids. They can leave that tent, go right to the next one and get signed up for a government phone. They can go over here and get their COVID shot right across the parking lot right here. And they go get some
with
hot
Arkansas
food.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield.
So we try to have.
See, I need to ask about that too, because they want to have immunizations at the resource fair on November 11th that they're having at the First United Methodist with St. Luke's. We need to get COVID vaccines there. I might have to talk to you about it.
Then we had National Park nurses who did assessments last month. Then we
Hearing
have,
and sight, that what you're talking about, when they test your hearing and sight?
we have that next month with National Hearing. We've had Minority Health Fair.
Okay.
But
So for other community-minded humans who are watching this program and think, oh, I want to help or I want to organize something like what you have going, because you've been working on it a while and you've been a very grassroots active. I mean, it seems like it started out relatively small and it's grown up. It has grown up into a
we've been doing
Her
it
first-
over a year.
Our first Saturday, she was distraught.
In tears.
We only
It's
had
here.
15 people. We only had 16. I said, trust me, it's gonna get so.
We had
I said,
42.
You're at 42.
It was 40.
I said, it's gonna come a day when you're gonna be happy that it took the time, because if 1,000 people showed up, we wouldn't be ready for them anyway. So this is our chance to get our footing.
Mhm.
And now we have almost 200 people coming on that Saturday from 40
On
people.
average
So,
Saturday.
so,
We run out.
yeah, so
We have to leave because we don't have any more. Then we serve a hot lunch. New Life is there. They serve hot lunches.
Nice.
They provide, Dr. Clem's office is there sometimes to do eyes. We try to get everybody we can, and through Boyce, we're gonna have some more people. CCMC is going to try to be there to do some case management.
we're gonna try to get everybody, the problem that we're facing, it's gonna take a network. It's not gonna, one organization, one individual can't be tasked with something that can never be solved. And the honest thing about it is, I know we all want to talk and aspire to it, but homelessness is not gonna be solved. It can only be managed. and you don't manage it, then you're going to be looking at what San Francisco is looking at. You're going to be looking at what California is looking at. You're going to be looking at what Portland is looking at, because it's went unmanaged. Because there's people, I take 3 people off the street, and then there's 8 more that just recently been pushed on there.
Right.
Because of the growing economy and loss of jobs and COVID and not being able to work and family and domestic violence and all of these things that's constantly happening without a counterbalance. So if that's been happening for years without the counterbalance of somebody providing the services to rectify that, then we're fighting from the ground up. That's already been, we can't keep up with the people that's recently coming on because we're managing the people who've been left out.
Been there, right?
So
And those are all the people we see
that's
too.
right. So
We just don't see
that's right.
homeless. We see marginalized people, those very people with their children, whole families.
Mhm.
Grandparents come, and then you see the sons and the daughters, all of them, packs. They will come in a pack. It's all of them. You cannot say it's just homeless.
Yeah,
It
because
is marginalized people who don't have, they live paycheck to paycheck, or it's one check.
right. All it takes is
And the
one
pandemic made it
check,
that much
and
worse.
then you're tossed into a bunch of decisions that all of them are bad.
Mhm.
People ask me, well, I don't really understand why they just don't pull themselves up by their bootstraps, or why don't they just do this, do that? And I have to remind them, I said, first of all, when you become homeless, you are tossed into decision-making that's only short-term. The things that they need to fix their homelessness are long-term decisions. You can't be talking about going and sitting in a DMV if you don't know where you're going to eat in 2 hours. You have to focus right now, what I'm doing right now, on how am I going to eat 2 hours. And guess what? When you get done in 2 hours and you find you something to eat, you may have an hour to kind of not think about anything, but then you got to go right back to how am I going to eat later? Where am I going to pitch my tent? Where am I going to sleep? The police ran me off 2 or 3 times last week. I have nowhere. They took my tent. So you cannot start working on those long-term things that really fix your situation, because you're tossed into a hearing now situation in short term. And when I get an individual, the first thing I make them do is, when I'm meeting with them, is I don't want you worrying about where you're going to eat, because I'm going to get you a food box. I don't want you worrying about hygiene products. I'll get you socks, underwear, deodorant. I don't want you worrying about none of these short-term things. I'm going to get you a temporary shelter. I'm going to be working on all. Those are now my burdens.
Mm-hmm.
I need you working on getting down to the DMV. Here's a bus ticket. Go down there and sit down there until you get your license, so I can get you over to another program. And I start working on those short-term things while they now can release those things and those Maslow hierarchy of needs, so they can start working on those long-term things that really fix the situation.
And when my son said, and Jean has talked to Keenan before, so she knows his train of thought. I said, what should we name it? And he said, food for thought. He said, because you're giving somebody food for nourishment, but you're giving them opportunity to use just what Boyce said. You're giving them food to carry them, but then you're giving them resources that'll take them further after they've received nourishment. So that's how it came up with food for thought. But they use terminology that I've never heard. Like when they'll be talking to Boyce about where they're living, this really just threw me. I'm living in an AMBO.
AMBO?
An abandoned house. An AMBO. That sticks with me. It was just like when one of them said, not one of them, but before, someone who was homeless talked about a solo cup.
Solo cup?
Mm-hmm. Because you can take a solo cup and go to the fountain. You can give someone ramen noodles or a packet of ramen noodle, grits, or anything that's instant cereal, and they can go to the fountain and get hot water and feed themselves.
That is
with a
interesting.
solo cup and a spoon.
When
And
I-
I put them in bags because they can eat.
Right.
But see, regular people don't know that. But even people who live, not just people, can take those same things, even if they have a house.
Mm-hmm.
But if they have hot water,
Right.
they can live.
We are in the business that we're constantly working on homeless individuals, but we've also got to be constantly in tandem working on preventing people from becoming homeless.
Yes.
Because if you
Yes.
can catch an individual before they actually become homeless, it is much easier to help somebody stay where they're at. And it takes a lot less resources than for them to be evicted and already out on the streets to try to cover these deposits once again, first month's rent and application fees, and they may not have their driver's license, or they may have an old bill now they can't move out because they got a light bill from 2 years ago. So you start running into way more roadblocks than you could have just stopped the eviction from the beginning and took those resources we have and used them wisely to stop homelessness. Because I don't get worried when I get an individual to say, when I meet with them, they say, how long have you been homeless? And how many times in the last 3 years have you been homeless? And they say, well, I've been homeless for a couple of years, and this is, probably 3. Somebody else is pulling their hair out, lighting their hair on fire. I've got to do something right. Individuals like that have learned what Janice just said. Individuals like that know they can go and pay $10 at the YMCA and get a shower daily for $10 a month. People like that know that the Jackson House feeds 12 to 1. People like that know that United Way is giving out resources on this day. They have been in the system so long, they know where they can pitch their tent without police. It's those individuals that just became famous a week ago because they're going to spiral out of control with bad decision-making, panicking, and not knowing what to do, and push themselves further deep into homelessness.
Right. I mean, because that's that thing that I always think about of mental health seems to be, mental health and drug use seems to be a pervading thing among homelessness. And then I always think, oh, if I had to live on the street for 3 days, I would easily see myself going in either of those two directions without even a thought. It would just be suddenly I'm on drugs and I've lost my mind.
Well, people don't
having
use
to deal with
drugs
that.
just because they taste good.
They
People
don't.
use drugs because they are trying to get a temporary break from
Right.
these things that are prevalent in their life. So in order for you to stop that drug use and try to help them along, you have to show them that there's a way out of that without them having to take a temporary break. They're just going to wake up right back in it,
And
which
then
means they
we
have to go
forget
right
about
back.
the kids.
Then they become they start to self-medicate. But you asked me earlier on I've been doing it so long, how do I keep doing it?
Mhm.
Well, one thing I constantly remind myself is I don't care if I work with an individual and it takes me a year to get him off the street, because I would gladly trade that year for the amount of time that he has left in his life that he's going to be better. Because a year times him living another 20 years and not on the street, I'll take those odds. I'll take that amount of time because that's time well spent. And it's not just that individual, because that individual has kids. That individual has a mother. That individual has a father and siblings and brothers. And if you improve one person's life, you're going to improve the relationship within that whole dynamic. So it's not even one life that you changed. It's a multitude of lives that are now becoming healed.
When I'm seeing kids that I taught, their parents were the same way. Now they're there and they have kids. So it's just a cycle. They're starting it never stops. So you're trying to, and I'm telling boys, oh, I had them. What can we do? But some people want to stay where they are. So you just give them the services and you give them what they need and they're okay. You just provide them with what they need and go forward.
And that's an interesting thing in terms of when I think about like the overwhelming number of humans in our community that are on the brink of homelessness or are homeless, and the expectation that seems to pervade those who do have shelter, that we should all live the same. And I think it's really important for us to remind each other that we just need our needs met. And if your need is different than mine, I should not curse you for having a different need. But if I have something that I can offer you that will meet your need,
That's what you do.
that's what I want to do. And then if you have something later in life to offer to meet someone else's need, you will probably do that too. And the thing about children, which is really just frightening me, is I read the statistic about the, 14,000 school-age children on any given day don't have a home. And most of them are invisible, partly because of protection of school systems not to reveal who they are, but also because it's a complex couch surfing, trying to find a place.
We just
to
met
stay
with
for you.
the liaisons for McKinney-Vento for Lakeside, Lake Hamilton, and Cutter Morning Star a week or two ago. So there are resources out there. And like I said, that network that I've been talking about for years, that's forming. And we would love for it to be a lot quicker, but I'm seeing way more than I ever saw. And those liaisons are starting to work with us right now. That's why they called that meeting, because they wanted a list of resources who they could call, because they do have families that's afraid for them to report it, because I don't want my kids taken just because I'm in a bad situation. Now they don't want to reach out for help because I'm going to get punished for asking for help.
Right.
And
I
then
lose
they
my
fall
house,
deeper.
lose my kids.
But I tell people all the time, you don't have to worry about it. I've dealt with DHS, and I saw it on the mental health side, and I saw it on the McKinney-Vento and the school side, where mental health workers are going, oh my God, those kids are in that, I'm calling DHS. And then they call DHS and nothing happens. And they're all upset. Can't believe they didn't do anything. Well, DHS, it's a high bar. People think it's a low bar. It's an extremely high bar. It has to be gross negligence. And as long as that individual is in right now working on a plan, they're not going to take the kids. I've had DHS. I met a lady, came in for an appointment, and DHS showed up 10 minutes after that and said, as long as you guys work out a plan before I leave the room, we're not taking those kids. If you got a plan or something you can work, I'm going to sit back and see if that works. And if it doesn't, and if it gets too bad, then we'll step in. So we need to educate the people and let them know that your kids are not going to be taken unless you're ignoring this. You're not going to get your kids taken for asking for help, because DHS is not doing that. I've dealt with them, so I know. So, but they don't know that. That's the perception.
Right. No, but it's really good to get that information out there and understand that, we do want people to stay in their family units if your family units are safe, and get people lifted out.
And we've got to understand that we can't drag people along. We, like you were saying a minute ago, what my standards of where I think you should be or not, it's just what I feel. That's not, first of all, people who are homeless that long are just like people who have been in jail more in their life than they've been out of jail. They're institutionalized. And you have to get that out of them. You have to get homeless. I've got a guy right now that was living in the woods. I got him out of the woods. I got him in his own apartment. I got him a job making $16 an hour right now, doing great. But I drove down the street a couple of days ago, and he still had that backpack on all the way up 3 feet above his head with everything he belonged. He is so used to carrying his belongings and worried about them getting stolen, and
he can't even leave them in
he
apartment.
can't just leave it because he feels like he has to have those things to survive, because he spent 5-6 years having that. You leave that stuff 5 or 6 years ago, you may not make it through the night. So he's been institutionalized to feel like he has to do that even when he doesn't.
Yeah, I bet it's really hard to find whatever the new normal is anytime you take a shift or a change. And in our present day society, I mean, everyone is faced with a loss of some kind, whether it's an actual physical human of your life that died or was affected by, COVID and pandemic, or just our general isolation. And I think that all of us are really suffering from that change and wanting to reconnect and not knowing how, or not feeling safe. And if my individual safety issue just around mask wearing with, vaccinated, unvaccinated, what's the standard there? I can't even imagine in a place where, I'm thinking, oh, I don't have a home and have no place to find food, and what kind of adjustments I have.
We
to
have
make.
got to walk with these individuals. It goes back to handing money out the window. To be honest, the best thing you could do for an individual is give them self-worth. You give them self-worth by giving them a task, by giving them something to call their own, by helping them start to accomplish small things, setting short-term goals that you know they can accomplish, and don't set them up for failure to gain that self-confidence and that knowledge of self-worth. That's going to be way better than handing anything out the window and enabling that individual to have to come right back and get that money again. You then start to teach them how to fish instead of feeding them, because we can't continue to feed people. You have to teach them to be able to feed themselves, or we'll never tackle this problem.
And then I think it's interesting because, I make an effort in our neighborhood is pretty friendly, and a lot of people tend to walk around the block. So we know who is the neighborhood and who's not. But then also, if we have regular people who come through who look like they're in need, befriending humans that you see, I think is a really easy first step. Well, maybe it's not easy, but it's a first step on trying to build a relationship with anyone who's different than you and seems to have different needs and whatnot.
I tell people all the time, you have to be aware of they call it the social drag, which means that if you're around people who are smarter than you, it makes you have to constantly aspire to them. If you hang around people that are less smarter than you, you have to stop your growth in order to bring them along. And if you're around people who do bad things, eventually it's going to drag you down to bad things. That's just the social drift of things. So if we know that to be true, why are we putting people in prison with people already having problem with that, instead of coupling them with somebody who can mentor and drag and pull them out, versus sticking them with people and making them learn more bad habits? So we as a society, our perception and what we're doing a lot of things, wasting a lot of resources under the quote, we're helping, or we're doing the right thing, but that's our misjudgment. And we're wondering why the people themselves aren't benefiting or doing what they're supposed to do. And it's not even their fault. It's our fault as a society for making those decisions of enabling instead of helping. That's that thin line that I always talk about.
Right. And interesting that you talk about mentorship, because I've been thinking about a lot of mentorship in our community. Because we have a large retired community, there is a lot of knowledge stuck in people's heads that they've stopped working. And if, every person who had a wealth of knowledge from their life experience could find a young person and say, these are the things I've learned and these are the perspectives I have, and we could just share our tools a lot more widely.
That's right. People who want to help, who want to volunteer, the way you can really help, some people is financially, some people is mentoring, some people it's just having somebody to reach out to that'll pick up the phone when I need you. There's all kinds of ways people can help, but we have got to get started to where some of these individuals that you're talking about that's retired, and the individuals that we come across, like these kids at McKinney-Vento in the schools that you're talking about, we need to get those individuals that's already in a troubled home and say, we've got a program for your kid and you, not just you, but you and your kid, and take that kid and say, we're putting you in a mentorship. You're going to be shadowing an electrician 3 times a week for 2 hours, and start teaching them a trade and giving them the tools that they're going to need in order to be productive in society, instead of them sitting at home with none of the resources and nobody getting any tools at all that will help them get out of the situation that they're in.
Right, or even the vision or hope.
Yeah, or they can't even see it. Yeah, they've not even seen it to aspire to.
Yeah. It's really hard to move towards something you can't see. I know that. Yeah. Well, yeah. Very good. Thank you very much for those words of wisdom and sharing your experience. Now, Ms. Davis, do you have any other things that you'd like to say? Okay. I'd like to also acknowledge that we have couple other people in the room who might want to join in the conversation and actually have that camera light in the future. Jean
I think-
Lacefield and Carol
I think it
Schultz.
would be good to ask, to put it on the program where people can donate and how they can connect to volunteer. They have that information that we
Right.
need to share.
And my phone number with Watchdog Behavioral Health, my phone number is 501-625-2357. I operate and manage the PATH grant, that stands for Project Assistance, that helps transition from homelessness. If you have a mental health diagnosis and income coming in, I can help you with one time a year with deposits or rent, try to help you get over that hump if you're on a fixed income. Also, I can help people get to shelters. I've got hygiene products, tents, tarps, and whatever else that we need. I've got other places that they can be referred for job training and anything else that we need to get them out of homelessness. Or they can come to Food for Thought on the fourth Saturday of every month. We have a tent set up right there where we offer all of these resources that I just spoke about, along with a host of other resources that we get all together at one time every fourth Saturday.
So that's what, November 27th? Is that what you
Yes,
said to me?
from 10 to 2.
Okay. And then St. Luke's and First United Methodist is having a resource fair on November 11th, which is a Thursday, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And that'll be at the First United Methodist Family Center, downtown, I think at 1100 Central. And they'll have warm wear and
Coats and tents and tarps and sleeping bags and people there to kind of help refer them to any other resources that may not be available there. And we also do showers every Tuesday
at St. Luke's.
at St. Luke's for the homeless from 8 to 12.
I think Gospel Light has a love day on 2 Saturdays a week where they do showers and haircuts. I know that the resource fair, if you are at all interested in doing any donation, they're looking for $10 McDonald's gift cards, $15 Walmart gift cards, and money for bus passes that you can take over to either the First United Methodist or St. Luke's to donate, so that we can get people food. And a lot of people need gas money. A lot of families on the edge, especially, you can't get to anything if you can't get to anything.
And we also have a program to help veterans. If you're a veteran, there's a host of programs that can help. I've got referral people that I work with on my homeless coalition in Malvern, who is over veteran affairs. And all I have to do is get you connected with Veteran Affairs, and they've got resources that'll house you and get you any type of mental health treatment, physical health treatment, or whatever you need. And we also have private donors that's for veterans. So there's a host of things for veterans. As long as you can prove that you're a veteran, you can get all of those resources. You just have to have a copy of your DD-214 or some paperwork stating that you are a veteran.
Now, is that coordinated with the work that Steve Azell does too, or is it?
Steve, it's not coordinated. This is a private donor that I'm speaking about.
Okay.
And he is just a veteran who
Cares about veterans?
cares about other veterans. And he wanted to know how he could help. And that's one of the ways me and him sat down and talked about how you can help. I told him that we'll sit this money over here, and anytime I come across a veteran, if they've got their DD-214, I'll get a copy of it. I'll get his story and what his needs are, and I'll email it to you, and we'll give you a running list of what we're doing with the ends, the money that you're sending, and how we're helping.
Excellent, excellent. I really appreciate that you are a citizen of my community. If I ever talk about
And 4 other
citizenship,
counties.
citizenship and what it looks like, here's our poster child.
And I'd like to say that the Giving Team Inc., we need volunteers to assist on
Oh,
the fourth Saturday
okay.
to help with the amount of volume of people that we have coming through,
Okay.
as well as donations for our care bags and other essentials to give out to people, we can be reached at the Giving Team Inc., which we're on Facebook,
Okay.
and Janice Davis. Donations are certainly appreciated.
So the Giving Team Inc. All right.
Appreciated. We're a 501c3.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So yes, this is the beginning of our Coming Home Safe Shelter for All conversation. I invite any community member who has any heart or interest in discussing how we build a stronger community here in Hot Springs and Garland County and the surrounding areas, or really in anywhere, state of Arkansas, the entire country. The issue is ubiquitous with us. And what we learn here, we can share with others, and what you may know to do, I would like to know about, and we can all develop tools and strength and mostly hope and encouragement that we can help others in our community and build a safer and thriving environment for everyone. Thank you, Paul and Garland County Library, for actually really truly being a place of connection. And I really appreciate that you've invited us here and are hosting our little conversations. We look forward to doing it next month.